"Sign it, Mara, or I'll make you look like an elder abuser." That line came out right in the middle of the nursing home fundraiser, under warm lights, in front of the pastor, the neighbors, and a phone that was already recording. My hand was still passing Grandma Evelyn a glass of water, while he stood by the auction table, calm, like he was reminding me of a house rule. But they forgot one thing. They smear me with words. I lock them down with paperwork. They didn't need my signature. They needed the door, the hospital room door, the file door, the decision door. Who gets to stay beside her? And who gets crossed out of her life with one accusation? And that's the story of Mara Bennett. Some families don't have to lay a hand on you. They just need the whole community to believe you're the bad guy. If one day your kindness gets turned into a charge so they can take the person you love most, what would you do? Keep your head down to keep the peace, or stand up once? I'm Stella. What state are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now? Comment and tell me. If you want a justice flip that's tight and painful, hit like, subscribe, and stay to the end. Because Mara's thin envelope wasn't open to beg. It was open to change the rules of the game. That night, the nursing home banquet room was packed. Grandma Evelyn sat beside me in a cream cardigan, a medical alert bracelet on her wrist. Some days, she said my name right away. Other days, she needed one extra beat to place my face. So the rule was clear. No one puts paperwork in front of her when she's tired, no matter what they call it, even if they call it just procedure. The second the water glass touched the table, Gary slid a sheet of paper across the surface like he was sliding a trap. Authorization. Temporary financial POA sat bold at the top, the signature line blank like an open mouth. His finger tapped on my name. Tap, tap. Just loud enough for the person beside us to glance over. Behind him, Linda stood still, gripping her purse like she was holding the final verdict. Brielle had stepped back to the perfect filming distance, the corner of her mouth lifted like she was waiting for my outburst to turn into a clip. "It's just to make things easier for her expenses," Gary said, his voice sweet as sugar. Then the threat dropped, clean and dirty at the same time, just enough that anyone listening would fill in the rest with their imagination. Grandma's hand trembled slightly. A thin little ting rang out as ice tapped the glass. No shouting, just one pause, so short, and then the napkin got adjusted neatly against her chest like I was fixing her appearance, when really I was fixing my own breathing. "She's tired," I said, normal enough that an outsider might think it was nothing. "Not signing anything right now." Brielle jumped on it immediately, turning the lens straight toward us. "Everyone, please pray for Grandma Evelyn's safety." Sweet. Loud enough. Just enough to turn the whole thing into an insinuation. A few eyes shifted. Gary leaned in, still polite as ever. "Bring her to my place for one night. I'm closer. It'll be easier." The last sentence was the blade. People are watching. Inside my coat pocket, cold metal touched my fingertips. The old brass key. At home, there was a keepsake box, and inside it, a thin envelope Grandma had handed me like a warning she didn't say out loud. No argument, just a nod. Just pushing the wheelchair slowly through the crowd, slow enough they couldn't say, "She's making a scene," fast enough that Grandma didn't have to hear another word. Out in the parking lot, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up under my palm. 4 words got typed, then sent. "Send the archived file, now." The car pulled out, the party music falling away behind us. Grandma Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, eyes on the window. Sometimes she'd turn, blink a beat too long before recognizing me, then grab my hand like she was afraid she'd get lost. I squeezed back and kept the silence soft so she could breathe. My phone buzzed again. The family group chat popped up. Bennett family updates. Mom sent one line. "Don't make this big. People are watching." 6 words, familiar as the sound of a deadbolt. In this house, right and wrong always came after looking good. Has anyone ever been trapped between what's right and what looks good like that? If you have, drop a like so I know you get that feeling. My thumb slid into the gray folder, files named with nothing but dates. One tap and it was all there, appointments, emails, receipts. Not to win, just so later, when they told their version, I'd still have something that couldn't be twisted. A memory flashed, quick enough to not break the pace. At 17, tooth pain so bad it kept me awake, I asked for money to see a dentist. Gary barely looked up and said, "Not in the budget." A few weeks later, Brielle posted a new purchase with a bright smile. I didn't cry that night. I opened my laptop, booked a cheap clinic, saved everything, and picked up more shifts. I pulled over where there were no church lights and no familiar faces. In the glove compartment was the thin packet I always carried when I took Grandma to appointments. Copies of her advance directive and healthcare POA she'd set up while she was fully sharp. What Gary shoved at me tonight was financial. One of those, just to make it easier authorizations so someone can hold the money and the power. But hospitals don't work off easier. They work off what's valid. Mom's message still glowed cold on the screen. One thought hit, short and sharp. How gentle do I have to be to finally get peace? I locked the phone, like locking the noise outside. The next call didn't go to family. It went to Grandma Evelyn's attorney, the one who helped her set everything up years ago. When he answered, I set it straight. They just tried to force me to sign a temporary financial POA in front of the whole town. They set up the camera, set up witnesses, and they threatened to accuse me of elder abuse if I didn't sign. Silence for one beat. Then his voice dropped. Mara, listen carefully. Don't sign anything, and from now on, everything goes through the file. If you're at the age where you're caring for an older parent, or you know someone carrying that weight, send this video to them. Sometimes doing it by the book is how you keep the peace. The next morning had that late fall cold, wind snapping across Gary's lawn, dry leaves spinning in little tornadoes. I got there early to pick Grandma up and take her to her follow-up, like the schedule said. But the second I stepped onto the porch, I saw a brand new lock and a black and white printed notice taped to the doorframe, big as a public announcement. Only family-approved visitors allowed. I stopped for exactly one beat, not because the door was locked, because of the wording. It turned the person caring for her into an outsider with one sheet of paper. A curtain moved. Gary opened the door just enough that no one could say he kicked me out. A polite smile was already set on his face. 2 neighbors were watering plants next door, looking up. He spoke loud enough for them to hear. Mara, calm down. She's resting. Don't make noise in front of the neighbors. Don't make noise was always the trap. React and you're wrong. Stay quiet and you lose. Let me see her for 1 minute, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. Just to make sure she's okay. Gary shook his head like he was protecting someone from a threat. Doctor said limit agitation. Brielle's worried too. Everyone's worried. No arguing? I stepped off the porch and called the clinic where Grandma had her follow-up. The receptionist stayed professional. Yes, can I have the patient's name? Evelyn Bennett. Please confirm today's appointment and tell me who's listed as the primary contact on her file. A short pause. Then she read her screen. In our system, the primary contact is Gary. The authorized update contact is Linda. My voice stayed even. When was that changed? It shows an update this morning, she said. There's a note to only release information to that list. My heart hit once, dry and hard. They hadn't just locked a house door. They were locking the file door. My phone buzzed again. A Facebook notification popped up. Brielle's post, sitting on my feed like a poster slapped in the middle of town. Elder abuse is real. Under it was a close-up photo of Grandma's hand, medical bracelet visible, paired with a vague caption. Please pray. Comments were already rolling. Oh my God, call someone. That poor woman. People who'd never stepped into the house once were passing judgment off emotion. Has anyone ever had someone post your story online before you could say a word? If you have, comment. I have, so I know I'm not alone. My hand went cold. My brain snapped back into the mode I knew too well. Follow evidence, not noise. Back in the car, I opened the thin envelope Grandma had handed me the night before. Inside was a copy of the healthcare POA she'd signed while she was fully lucid. Clear signature, clear date. Tucked with it was a small note, her handwriting shaky but firm. Don't argue. Use the process. I sat still for one beat to let that land, then called the attorney. They changed the emergency contact and locked her information this morning. Brielle's spinning it online. He answered immediately. No fluff. Okay, don't go back to that door. Now we move with paperwork. My eyes flicked back to the notice on Gary's door. They wanted me to ask permission. But from that moment on, the path didn't run through family anymore. It ran through the system, and through the one thing they couldn't bend. Valid paperwork. I didn't go back to Gary's door. If the attorney said, move through the file, then that's what it had to be. The text to Mom was short. Meet at the notary office or the attorney's office, with a third party present, otherwise no meeting. Mom replied fast, fine, just don't embarrass the family. Same line again. The next afternoon, the meeting was at a small notary office on Main Street. Gary walked in first, his leather folder clamped tight. Linda followed, eyes already red. Brielle came last with her phone held up, saying loud enough for the camera to catch, "Our family's making peace." No one asked how Grandma Evelyn was doing. Gary put the financial POA on the desk and slid it toward me. "Sign it," he said, light like he was handing over a menu. "So everything runs smooth." The pen was already there. The paper was already open. "If we're signing anything, we sign it the right way," I said. "Anything connected to her care money. Show me the last 24 months of statements and the caregiving invoices, all of it." Linda started crying on the spot. "You're so cold, Mara. She's weak and you're talking about money." Brielle swung the camera to Mom's face, then to mine, waiting for one sentence that would make me the villain. Gary froze. "That's private." "Then there's nothing to sign," I said, keeping my voice flat. "No books, no signature." The notary, a middle-aged woman in glasses, looked up and asked one direct question. "Is anyone pressuring you to sign?" Linda choked mid-cry. Brielle went quiet for one beat because that question wasn't pretty to film. Gary gave a tight little laugh, dug into his bag, and pulled out a neat stack of printed pages. Selected, trimmed, clean-looking, like it had been prepared. "Do you think that question is interfering or saving? Comment and tell me." "Here," Gary said. "See, everything's fine." In those straight lines, one item hadn't been covered well enough. A clear date and time, a clear merchant name, one point that could be verified. I didn't need the whole mountain of paperwork right then. I just needed one place to open the door. The stack got folded and set in my bag. "I'm taking this copy," I said. "I'll review it and get back to you." Gary nodded, thinking he'd pulled me into signing territory. He didn't realize he just handed me the one thing that terrifies people who hide, a red mark that can be checked. The selected printout felt hot in my bag. I didn't go home. I drove straight to a small office in a strip mall outside town. The sign said forensic bookkeeping. The woman who opened the door glanced at the papers, didn't ask about family, only asked the work. "What do you need?" "Not a full analysis," I said. "Find me one red flag, one mismatch big enough to verify." She nodded. 3 hours. That night, the glow from my laptop was the only thing awake with me. Numbers moved, vendor names were missing, receipts didn't line up. The truth came through without drama. They weren't caring for her, they were draining her retirement care money. Every wrong number felt like a small blade against trust. Before I could even breathe, the second message came. Another line circled. Deposit. Same date. The merchant was clear. And the name on the booking was Gary. I didn't scream. I hit print. The page slid out, and I signed the corner with the date and time like a stamp that said, "Seen." Then it went into a hard folder labeled Evelyn Locke. The bookkeeper called back short and sharp. "To confirm the full 24 months, we need complete data. This is only a slice. The fastest legal way is for your attorney to send official requests to the bank, the management company, everyone." "How long?" I asked. "Within 24 hours, she said. Because the moment they smell someone checking the books, they start cleaning." Those 2 words, 24 hours, were still ringing when my phone rang again. This time it was the clinic. The receptionist sounded tighter than yesterday. "Ms. Mara, Evelyn Bennett was brought into the ER early this morning. There's conflict with family. If you're her healthcare representative, you should come right away." I didn't explain. I said, "I'm on my way," and hung up. The hospital hallway smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. I hadn't even reached the intake desk before Mom's voice carried from the waiting area, deliberately loud enough to make strangers turn their heads. "That girl is dangerous. She's controlling my mother. People need to be careful." Gary stood beside her, serious like he was protecting the hospital. Brielle held her phone lower than usual, recording on the sly. "If you've ever been labeled in front of a crowd, I want you to comment 1. Just that." A few strangers looked at me with the kind of gaze people use when they believe a story before they know the truth. I didn't step into the argument. I went straight to the desk and said one clear sentence. "I'm Evelyn Bennett's healthcare representative. I need the social worker and the charge coordinator in a private room." The intake staff looked at me, then at them. "Do you have documentation?" The Evelyn Locke folder opened. The healthcare POA, an advance directive, went on the counter. Next to them, a handwritten list, her meds, her doctor's name, her allergies, the things a real caregiver knows, not someone showing up to perform. The staff nodded, made a call. "Please come with me." In the small room, the social worker came in first, then the coordinator. I kept it tight. Yesterday, the contact info was changed. Today, they're staging a scene. I'm not asking for anyone to be thrown out, I said. I'm asking the hospital to follow the valid file and restore her information. The social worker asked, Boitiner, what do you want updated? I'm the valid emergency contact, I said. I'm the authorized person for medical updates. And please note, if anyone applies pressure, makes threats, or causes disruption in the care area, staff should intervene per protocol. They entered everything into the system, one field at a time. I watched the screen and saw nothing dramatic, just lines of text being corrected in the right places, like a latch being slid back into place. The door to the room flew open. Gary pushed his way in, trying to keep his voice respectable. We're family. We have the right. The charge coordinator looked up, voice cold and clipped. Please, stop applying pressure in the care area. If you don't, we'll call security. No one shouted, but that sentence cut the whole performance off, like someone flipped a breaker. Gary froze. Linda clamped her mouth shut. Brielle lowered her camera because there was no victim shot left to capture. A few minutes later, they led me into the observation room. Evelyn was in bed, eyes half open. When she saw me, she blinked and let out a small, soft breath, like home had landed back in the right place. She turned her head slightly, looked toward them, and said one quiet but clear sentence. Stop making that girl apologize. No one answered. I turned back to the staff and closed it with one last line, loud enough to hear, clear enough to hold. From now on, the hospital works only with the legally authorized representative on file. No one changes her information or makes decisions for her on their own anymore. That afternoon, the second I left the hospital, a text came through. We need to talk. Tonight. No exclamation points, no arguing, just the tone of someone who still believes they get to schedule my life. At 6:59, 3 knocks hit my apartment door, steady and confident. When I opened it, Gary was standing there, Linda tucked to the side, and Brielle holding a white folder like it was a gift. No one asked how Grandma was doing. They walked in like this was still their house. Gary set the folder on my kitchen table. To protect the family's reputation, he said, no one wants this getting out. Sign this, and everything calms down. An NDA, dense long, packed with non-disclosure language. In exchange, a few vague promises. The family will support you. Avoid misunderstandings. Keep things stable for her. Linda looked at me like I was a stubborn child and dropped her voice low. You want her to be shamed? You want people saying she was hurt by her own granddaughter? Tears hovered. Perfect timing, perfect placement. They always were. My hand turned pages. A small line near the end jumped out. Consulting fee. Payee? Gary. Not a small number. This wasn't protecting reputation. This was paid silence. There was no yelling, just one breath tightening, then letting go. If everything's clean, why does it need silence? I asked straight. Gary smiled. Still that smile that treats everything like a transaction. Sweetheart, in this world, people only need a story. We don't give them a story, and we're fine. Brielle cut in, sugar sweet, like she was negotiating my right to exist. Just sign. I'll tell everyone you're still her caregiver. I'll post for you. Just cooperate. I looked at her for 1 second. It was strange, watching basic acknowledgement get sold like it was a favor. Linda dropped into a chair, sobbing. Mom's begging you. Do it for her. Do it for me. It was the kind of moment that makes you soften. My whole life, love in this house came with terms. Stay quiet and you get held. Speak up and you get left. But on the table, the NDA was still open to the page with Gary's name and that number. It pulled me back to what they really needed. If we're signing anything, we do it by the book, I said. Voice steady, not raised, not shaking. If you want me to keep it quiet, then give Grandma's attorney the right to request the full statements. 24 months. And we meet at the attorney's office with everything properly recorded. Not here. Gary frowned. You're making demands. No, I said. I'm setting terms. Brielle flicked her eyes to the camera in her hand like she wanted to turn it on, then didn't. Linda lifted her face, eyes red, waiting for Gary to decide. He went quiet for a few seconds, then nodded, like a man rewarding himself for finally breaking the stubborn one. There you go, Gary said, lifting the folder. Now you're being reasonable. We'll meet tomorrow. And remember, don't make this big. The door shut behind them. The apartment went still. On the table, only the faint imprint of that white folder remained, like a stain you haven't wiped yet. And in my head, there was only one short thought. They thought they brought a rope. What they really signed for me was a key. The door had barely closed when the apartment got so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycling on and off. The white folder they carried out was gone, but the smell of negotiation still hung in the air, like cheap perfume clinging to your clothes. I stood in the middle of the kitchen for a moment, then went straight to the low cabinet beside the bookshelf. Evelyn's keepsake box had been sitting there for years, wrapped in soft cloth. No one in that family ever touched it, because they liked things you could show off, not things you had to sit still and read. My fingers found the brass key in my coat pocket. Cold, heavy, familiar. Key in, turn. The lid popped with a dry little click. There was no jewelry inside, no valuables. Just what older people keep because it means something. A curled corner photo, a few Christmas cards, and a thin envelope with my name on it, in her shaky but clear handwriting. I opened the letter. Her handwriting moved slowly, but the words were straight. "If there ever comes a day they turn you into the bad one," she wrote, "don't scream to prove you're good. They'll use the screaming as evidence. Keep your file, keep your dates, keep your paperwork. That won't betray you." My throat caught for one beat. Not the dramatic kind. The kind you feel when someone finally sees you without making you explain yourself. A memory flashed, quick as headlights sliding across a wall. When I was little, she used to teach me how to clean the kitchen after dinner. While I wiped down the table, she'd say, "Don't try to win with a loud voice, Mara. A loud voice only makes people remember you lost control." Then she'd press her hand lightly over mine and add, "And don't let your kindness turn into a contract." I folded the letter and set it right in the center of my palm, like I was holding an instruction, not a comfort. In the bathroom, I switched on the light and looked straight into the mirror. The face looking back wasn't heroic, just a 27-year-old woman with tired shadows under her eyes. But something had shifted. The need to be understood was leaving. What stayed was one simple goal. Evelyn gets peace. I opened my phone's recorder and sent a voice memo to the attorney, no detours. Activate the protection clause. They're pressuring a financial document, they changed her contacts, and they're using public smears to force it. We've got the first red flag from the printout. Message sent. I went back to the keepsake box and lifted one more layer of paper. A photocopy of older documents showed up. No treasure, no magic. Just the kind of preparation a seasoned older woman would make. Notes about her care trust, the contact person, and a clause faintly underlined in pale ink. If a guardian or manager shows signs of self-dealing through care expenses, oversight can be transferred, and records can be formally demanded for review. She hadn't waited for me to win an argument. She built a path so I wouldn't have to argue at all. The lid closed, the brass key stayed in my hand one extra second before I put it away. One truth sat clear in my head. No dramatics needed. From here on out, they would hate me out loud. They would tell their story louder, and I'd have to live inside the looks. But if the price of Evelyn's peace was being called a bad granddaughter, I'd pay it. The next morning, the attorney's office lights were on earlier than usual. I walked in like someone filing paperwork, my palm slightly damp, but not hiding it. The Evelyn lock folder landed on the wooden table, and beside it, a black ballpoint pen. Small, but heavy like a decision. Mom sat across from me, twisting tissues in her hands. Gary leaned back, his face already wearing a practiced reason. Brielle sat at an angle, phone on her thigh, screen dark, finger resting on record anyway. My eyes didn't stay on Mom for long. They settled on the pen. Evelyn's words came back softly. Some fights are won with silence. The steady person is the one who doesn't crack first. The attorney opened a thin file and went straight into it. He laid out a timeline, a few bank statement pages that had been officially requested, a caregiving comparison sheet, and one page circled in red. The deposit on the exact day Evelyn was admitted sat right there, the booking name clear. No one needed to say the word crime. The paper said enough. Gary gave a short scoff, the kind of scoff from someone who still thinks this is psychological theater. "Look at her acting," he muttered, glancing at Mom like he was asking for backup. Another page slid forward, Evelyn's follow-up appointment schedule and her hospital admission confirmation, same date, placed right on top. A phone on the table buzzed lightly, the screen glowing and then fading, like a clock reminding everyone what time it is. The attorney looked straight at Gary and asked one very clean question. Who received in-home care services on that day? Silence dropped so heavy you could hear the HVAC hum. Linda stopped crying. Gary stopped smiling. Brielle looked down at her phone and turned the screen fully off, like the camera had suddenly become dangerous. I took one short breath to keep my voice firm. "Today isn't for debating," I said, slow and tight. "We're closing this with documents." Mom looked up, eyes red. "If you do this, she'll be heartbroken," she said, hoarse. "She's heartbroken because she's being used in a performance," I said once, then met Gary's eyes. "We need repayment, and we need a written commitment. From now on, visits happen only with supervision." The attorney nodded and set the document on the table. 48 hours, he said. "This is the chance to correct it yourselves before this moves forward through formal process." Gary swallowed hard. Mom stared at the paper like she was looking at an ending she couldn't control. Brielle stayed quiet. No more peaceful reconciliation vibe. I stood to leave. My phone vibrated. Brielle's message flashed cold. "Tomorrow at church, you're dead." I read it, didn't reply, and put the phone away. Out in the hallway, the white lights stretched in a straight line, and for the first time in days, my feet weren't chasing them anymore. They were chasing the truth. Sunday morning church was fuller than usual. The bulletin board in the lobby had one simple line: "Prayer for Evelyn." It sounded gentle, but in a small town, sometimes the word prayer is how people say what they won't say outright. I arrived early and sat in the back row. The brass key sat in my palm, cold and solid like an anchor. Up front, Mom took a seat by the aisle with tissues ready. Gary stood near the pastor, shaking hands and nodding, performing decent so well it was hard to accuse. Brielle held her phone low, angle set to capture every reaction. The pastor spoke about compassion, about caring for the vulnerable. Then Gary was invited to share. He never said my name, he didn't have to. He dropped lines just specific enough for the room to fill in the rest. Sometimes young people are impulsive, sometimes elders are easily influenced. Mom cried on cue, and right on schedule, heads turned toward me. I stood where I was. I didn't step forward like I was going to argue. My voice stayed low and even, enough to be heard, not enough to become a scene. "I'm not asking anyone to take sides," I said. "I'm asking you not to let Evelyn's name be used as a weapon." Then I took one step forward and placed a thin envelope in the pastor's hand. Inside was nothing flashy, just clean, dry proof, confirmation of the valid representative on file, the activated spending oversight mechanism, and the hospital's process-based visitation boundaries. No need to read it aloud. Just put it in the right hands. The hospital social worker stood and spoke briefly, neutrally. "The hospital follows valid documentation. Visits must respect boundaries. Any changes connected to care must go through proper channels." Those sentences didn't accuse anyone, but they killed the stage instantly. Brielle lowered her phone. Gary's smile thinned. Mom went quiet. Justice arrived quietly. No public shaming in the church, just power being removed. Unexplained expenses had to be repaid. And from that point on, they couldn't swap contacts, rewrite files, or use the community to pressure me into signing anything tied to Evelyn again. The cost arrived at the same time. Some eyes still held on to suspicion, because they heard my family's story before they heard mine. Some people would never change their minds, and the family as it was gone. But if the choice is between keeping a pretty family shell and keeping Evelyn at peace, I choose her. The biggest lesson wasn't how to beat them. It was the moment I stopped asking permission to be treated decently. I used to think if I stayed gentle enough, patient enough, explained enough, people would understand. But some people don't need to understand. They just need you quiet so they can steer you. From that day on, I let paperwork do the cold part for me, so my heart could keep the warm part for her. That afternoon, I went back to the hospital. Evelyn was a little more awake, her thin hand finding mine. She looked at me for a long time and whispered, almost like she was talking to herself, "You don't have to be gentle with people who hurt you." I nodded. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was one sentence, enough to keep living without bowing my head. If you've ever had to stay nice just to survive, did that line hit you? Drop a like so I know you heard it. And from the storyteller's side, maybe the value of this story is simple and real. Sometimes kindness doesn't protect you. Boundaries and process do. Truth isn't something you have to scream in a crowd. It's something you place in the right place. Dates, signatures, records. If you're caring for someone you love, I hope you don't become a hostage to what people will think. Choose a safe path, get the right support, and stay steady enough to keep loving the right person. Mara and Evelyn are fictional characters, inspired by real-life situations Stella has seen. The story had AI support and was edited by a human, but the pain and the pushback are real. If you're standing in the middle of family pressure right now, I hope you find your own brass key to protect the person you love. And if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments. I'm Stella. What state are you listening from? And what time is it where you are right now? Drop one line and tell me. If you made it all the way here, thank you. Truly. You just did something meaningful. You stayed with someone's story to the very end. If this story hit you, tap like and subscribe so stories like this keep reaching the people who need them. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got a few more minutes, watch another video on the channel. You might land on the exact sentence you needed to stand up today.